What if I told you that the heaviness you carry, the weight that presses against your chest in the early morning hours, the feeling that something inside you is fundamentally wrong or damaged beyond repair, what if I told you that this sensation is not evidence of your brokenness, but rather the unmistakable sign that you are in the midst of becoming whole? There is a difference, a profound and often misunderstood difference, between being shattered and being reshaped, between falling apart and falling open. And perhaps no one in your life has ever taken the time to help you understand that distinction. Perhaps everyone around you, with their well-meaning advice and their hurried solutions, has treated your pain as a problem to be fixed rather than a process to be honored. Perhaps they have looked at you with concern or impatience, wondering why you cannot simply move on, why you cannot just be happy, why you insist on dwelling in these dark interior spaces when the world outside is bright and waiting. But what they do not understand, what they cannot see from where they stand, is that you are not dwelling. You are descending. You're going down into the depths not because you're lost, but because something essential waits for you there. Carl Jung once spoke about the necessity of the descent, the importance of moving toward what he called the shadow, those parts of ourselves we have hidden away or denied, the aspects of our experience that do not fit neatly into the persona we present to the world. He understood that healing is not a linear journey upward toward the light, but rather a spiral that takes us down into darkness before it can bring us back transformed. He knew that the psyche has its own intelligence, its own timing, and that when we are hurting, when we are struggling, when we feel as though we are breaking open, we are often in the midst of the most important psychological and spiritual work of our lives. This is not the kind of work that can be rushed. It is not the kind of transformation that happens because someone tells you to think positively or because you force yourself to smile when everything inside you is screaming. This is the slow, patient, often excruciating work of integration, of bringing together the fragmented pieces of who you are, of learning to hold your own pain with tenderness rather than judgment. You are not broken. You are healing. And I know how strange that sounds, how contradictory it feels when you are in the middle of it, when every day feels like an effort, when getting out of bed requires more courage than anyone around you seems to recognize. I know that healing does not feel like what you thought it would feel like. You imagine it would be a relief, a lightness, a sudden clarity that would wash over you and make everything make sense. But instead it feels like confusion. It feels like grief. It feels like you're losing parts of yourself that you thought were essential, watching them fall away, and you do not yet know what will remain when the process is complete. You look in the mirror, and sometimes you do not recognize the person looking back. You sit with friends and feel like a stranger in your own life. You go through the motions of your daily routines and wonder when, if ever, you will feel like yourself again. But here is what no one tells you, what you must come to understand in your own time and in your own way. The self you are mourning, the version of you that feels lost, may have been a construction, a carefully built identity designed to keep you safe, to help you belong, to protect you from rejection or abandonment or the terrifying vulnerability of being truly seen. Jung called this constructed self the persona, the mask we wear to navigate the social world, the version of ourselves we present to meet the expectations of others. And there is nothing wrong with having a persona. We all need one. It is how we function in the world, how we maintain relationships, how we hold jobs and participate in society. But sometimes, often without realizing it, we become so identified with the persona that we forget it is a mask. We mistake it for our true self. We build our entire lives around maintaining this image, and we exhaust ourselves trying to be consistent with it, trying to live up to it, trying to convince ourselves and everyone else that this is who we really are. And then something happens, a crisis, a loss, a moment of profound disillusionment, a betrayal, an illness, a breakdown. Something comes along that shatters the carefully maintained facade, and suddenly you are left standing in the rubble, exposed and vulnerable, with no idea who you are without the mask. This is terrifying. This feels like disintegration. This feels like you're broken. But what if you're not breaking? What if you're breaking open? What if the structure that is collapsing was never meant to be permanent, was never meant to contain the fullness of who you actually are? When you are healing, truly healing, you are not returning to who you were before the wound. You are not going back to some imagined state of innocence or wholeness that existed before life hurt you. You are moving forward into a more authentic version of yourself, a version that can hold both the light and the dark, both the joy and the sorrow, both the strength and the vulnerability. You are learning to integrate experiences you once pushed away, emotions you once denied, truths about yourself and your life that you are not ready to face. And this integration is not comfortable. It does not feel like progress in the way we have been taught to understand progress. It feels like regression. It feels like you're getting worse instead of better. You find yourself crying more, not less. You find yourself needing more solitude, more time alone, more space to simply be without having to perform or explain or justify. You find yourself unable to engage with things that once seemed important, unable to muster enthusiasm for social obligations or professional ambitions, or the countless distractions that once kept you from feeling too much. People around you may start to worry. They may tell you that you are isolating, that you're being too hard on yourself, that you need to get out more, see friends, stay busy, stop thinking so much. And their concern comes from love, or at least from a kind of care, but it also comes from discomfort. Your healing makes them uncomfortable. Your willingness to sit with pain, to move slowly, to honor the depth of what you are experiencing, challenges their own relationship with suffering. It reminds them of things they do not want to feel, questions they do not want to ask, depths they are not ready to explore. And so they project onto you. They see your introspection as depression. They see your solitude as loneliness. They see your withdrawal as weakness. They see your healing as breaking, and they want to fix you, to bring you back to who you were, to restore the version of you that was easier for them to understand, easier for them to be around. But you cannot go back. And somewhere inside, even when you doubt yourself, even when you wonder if they are right, if you're doing something wrong, if you should be further along by now, somewhere deep inside you know that you cannot return to who you were before. That person, that version of you, could not hold what you now know, could not contain what you now carry. There is a concept in Jungian psychology called individuation, the lifelong process of becoming who you truly are, of differentiating yourself from the collective, from the expectations and projections of others, from the inherited patterns and unconscious beliefs that have shaped you since childhood. Individuation is not about becoming special or superior or separate from humanity. It is about becoming specific. It is about discovering and embodying your own unique constellation of qualities, your own particular way of being in the world, your own authentic relationship with life. And individuation requires dissent. It requires that you face what Jung called the shadow, the disowned and rejected parts of yourself, the aspects of your personality and your history that you have pushed into the unconscious because they did not fit with who you thought you should be. This confrontation with the shadow is not optional if you want to become whole. You cannot integrate what you refuse to see. You cannot heal what you continue to deny. And so the psyche, in its wisdom, will create circumstances that force you to look, that break down your defenses, that strip away the persona and leave you vulnerable and exposed and terrified, but also, finally, able to see yourself clearly. This is what is happening when you feel like you're falling apart. The structure of your false self is dissolving. The stories you told yourself about who you are, the beliefs you held about what you need to be in order to be loved or accepted or worthy, the strategies you developed to stay safe in an unsafe world. All of this is being questioned, challenged, dismantled. And yes, it hurts. It hurts in a way that is difficult to describe to someone who has not been through it. It is not the sharp pain of a sudden injury. It is the deep, pervasive ache of transformation, the feeling of being unmade so that you can be remade, the sensation of everything you thought was solid turning out to be provisional, temporary, constructed. You grieve. You grieve the loss of certainty. You grieve the loss of the future you imagined. You grieve the loss of the person you thought you would become. You grieve relationships that no longer fit, beliefs that no longer hold, identities that no longer serve. And this grief is not a sign that you are stuck or regressing or failing to heal. This grief is the healing. This grief is the process by which you release what was never truly yours, what you took on to survive, what you carried to belong, what you became to avoid being abandoned. Let me say this again because it is important, because it is something you need to hear over and over until it begins to sink in, until it moves from your head into your body, into your bones, into the quiet knowing that lives beneath thought. You're not broken. You are healing. The fact that you feel so much, that you are so aware of your own pain, that you cannot simply distract yourself or numb yourself or pretend that everything is fine, this is not a weakness. This is a kind of courage that most people never develop. This is a willingness to be with what is, to face reality without the comfort of illusion, to sit in the fire of transformation without knowing what will emerge on the other side. This is the hero's journey, not in the dramatic sense of slaying dragons and rescuing kingdoms, but in the quiet, interior sense of descending into your own underworld, facing your own demons, retrieving the lost and fragmented parts of yourself, and returning to the world more whole, more integrated, more authentically alive. But the journey takes time. It takes more time than you want it to take. It takes more time than the world is willing to give you. We live in a culture that is terrified of slowness, that equates speed with value, that wants every problem solved, every wound healed, every difficulty overcome as quickly as possible. We are told that healing should happen in a weekend workshop, a 10-day retreat, a series of therapy sessions that conclude with neat resolution and clear insight. We are sold the idea that if we just find the right technique, the right practice, the right teacher, the right medication, we can bypass the difficult parts, skip over the darkness, and arrive quickly at peace and clarity and happiness. But deep healing does not work that way. Deep healing is not efficient. It does not follow a schedule. It does not care about your plans or your timelines or your desire to be done with this already. Deep healing moves at the pace of the soul, which is to say, it moves slowly, cyclically, returning again and again to the same wounds from different angles, different depths, different levels of understanding. You will think you have worked through something, that you have processed a particular pain or released a particular pattern, and then months or years later will surface again, and you'll feel defeated, like you have failed, like all the work you did was for nothing. But this is not failure. This is the spiral nature of healing. You are not going backward. You are circling around the same territory at a deeper level, with more capacity, more awareness, more ability to hold complexity and paradox. Each time you return to a familiar wound, you bring more of yourself to it. You bring the wisdom you have gained, the strength you have developed, the compassion you have learned to extend to yourself. And each time, the wound releases a little more, integrates a little more, becomes a little less charged, a little less defining. This is how transformation happens. Not in one dramatic moment of breakthrough, but in 1,000 small moments of recognition, acceptance, release. Not in the sudden elimination of pain, but in the gradual expansion of your capacity to hold pain without being destroyed by it, to feel deeply without being overwhelmed, to remain present to your own experience without needing to escape or deny or numb. Jung believed that the unconscious is not just a repository of repressed trauma and unwanted impulses, but also a source of wisdom, creativity, and guidance. He believed that the psyche is always moving toward wholeness, always trying to bring into consciousness what has been hidden or denied, always attempting to integrate the disparate parts of ourselves into a coherent whole. And he believed that symptoms, what we might call problems or pathologies, are often the psyche's way of getting our attention, of forcing us to look at what we have been avoiding, of creating the conditions necessary for growth and transformation. From this perspective, your pain is not random. Your struggle is not meaningless. Your breakdown is not evidence of failure, but evidence that something in you is trying to break through, something essential that has been buried or suppressed, some truth about yourself or your life that you can no longer ignore. And the intensity of your suffering is proportional to the importance of what is trying to emerge. The more you have denied, the more you have split off, the more you have constructed a false self to navigate the world, the more painful the process of dismantling that construction will be. This does not mean you have done something wrong. This does not mean you are to blame for your pain. We all construct personas. We all develop survival strategies. We all learn to hide parts of ourselves to stay safe, to be loved, to belong. This is what children do in environments that are not fully attuned to them, that cannot hold the fullness of who they are. This is what humans do in cultures that value conformity over authenticity, productivity over presence, image over substance. We learn to split off the parts of ourselves that are not acceptable, that do not fit, that threaten our connection to others. We learn to perform, to please, to adapt, to become who we need to be in order to survive. And these adaptations are intelligent. They're creative. They are often necessary, but they come at a cost. The cost is that we lose touch with our own inner life, with our own desires and needs and truths. The cost is that we become strangers to ourselves, living lives that look good on the outside but feel empty on the inside, maintaining relationships that are based on who we pretend to be rather than who we actually are. And then one day, something shifts, something breaks. The facade can no longer hold. Maybe it is a crisis that strips away your defenses. Maybe it is a moment of clarity where you suddenly see how far you have drifted from yourself. Maybe it is a slow accumulation of small betrayals, small compromises, small moments of inauthenticity that finally become unbearable. Whatever the catalyst, you find yourself in a place where you can no longer pretend, where the gap between who you are and who you have been trying to be becomes too wide to ignore. And this is when the healing begins. Not when you have it all figured out, not when you have found the answers, but when you finally admit that you're lost, that you do not know, that the map you have been following does not lead where you thought it would. This admission, this surrender, this willingness to not know is the beginning of real transformation. In the midst of healing, you will feel vulnerable in ways you have never felt before. You will feel exposed, raw, like you have no skin, like everything touches you too deeply. You will find yourself crying at things that never used to affect you, feeling overwhelmed by emotions you thought you had under control, reacting in ways that surprise and sometimes frighten you. This is not regression. This is not weakness. This is what happens when the defenses come down, when the armor you have worn for so long finally cracks and falls away. You're feeling things you have not allowed yourself to feel for years, maybe decades, maybe your entire life. You are feeling the grief you never grieved, the anger you never expressed, the fear you never acknowledged, the longing you never admitted. And all of this feeling, all of this emotional intensity is necessary. It is the way the psyche processes and integrates experience. It is the way frozen trauma begins to thaw. It is the way the body releases what it has been holding. You cannot think your way through this. You cannot analyze your way to wholeness. You have to feel it. You have to let the emotions move through you. Even when they are uncomfortable, even when they are terrifying, even when you are afraid they will never end. But they will end. Not all at once. Not permanently. Emotions are not problems to be solved. They are energies that move through us, that rise and fall, that come and go like weather. When you stop resisting them, when you stop judging them, when you stop trying to control or eliminate them, they become more fluid, more tolerable, more integrated into the fabric of your experience. You learn that you can feel intense sadness without being destroyed by it. You learn that you can feel rage without acting it out destructively. You learn that you can feel fear without being paralyzed by it. You learn that emotions are information, signals from your inner world, messengers that are trying to tell you something important about your needs, your boundaries, your values, your truth. And as you develop this capacity to be with your own emotions, to hold them with curiosity and compassion rather than judgment and fear, you begin to develop a different relationship with yourself. You begin to trust yourself in a way you never have before. You begin to see that you are not as fragile as you thought, that you can handle more than you believe possible, that there is a strength in you that does not come from control or perfection, but from vulnerability, from honesty, from the willingness to be fully human. This is what healing looks like. Not the absence of pain, but the capacity to be with pain. Not the elimination of difficulty, but the development of resilience. Not the creation of a perfect life, but the acceptance of an imperfect one. Not the achievement of constant happiness, but the willingness to feel the full range of human emotion. Not the construction of a flawless self, but the integration of a complex, contradictory, beautifully flawed self. You're learning to hold paradox. You are learning that you can be both strong and vulnerable, both confident and uncertain, both wounded and whole. You are learning that healing is not a destination, but a process, not a problem to be solved, but a journey to be lived. Not something that happens to you, but something you participate in, co-create, allow. And as you move through this process, as you do the slow, patient work of integration, you will begin to notice changes. They will be subtle at first. You will have moments of clarity, brief glimpses of something true and solid inside you, something that was always there but that you could not access before. You will have days when the heaviness lifts, when you feel more present, more alive, more connected to yourself and to the world around you. You will find yourself making different choices, setting boundaries you could not set before, saying no to things that do not serve you, saying yes to things that do. You will notice that certain relationships begin to shift or fall away, not because you're pushing people away, but because you are no longer willing to contort yourself to maintain connections that require you to be less than who you are. You will notice that your tolerance for inauthenticity decreases, that you can no longer engage in superficial conversations or performative interactions without feeling drained and disconnected. You will find yourself drawn to deeper waters, to people who can meet you in the depths, to experiences that nourish your soul rather than distract you from it. This shift, this movement toward authenticity, will not always be comfortable. It will not always be understood or supported by the people in your life. Some will accuse you of changing, of becoming someone you are not, of abandoning who you used to be. And in a sense, they are right. You are changing. You are becoming someone new, or perhaps more accurately, you are becoming who you have always been beneath the layers of conditioning and adaptation and performance. You are shedding the false self and stepping into the true self. And this is threatening to people who are invested in the version of you that served their needs, that fit their expectations, that did not challenge them to look at their own lives, their own choices, their own relationship with authenticity. This is not your problem to fix. This is not your responsibility to manage. You cannot heal and simultaneously protect everyone around you from the discomfort of your healing. You cannot become whole and still maintain relationships that require you to stay fragmented. You cannot live authentically and still please everyone who prefers your mask to your face. Jung spoke about the process of individuation as necessarily involving a degree of separation from the collective, from the mass consciousness, from the unexamined beliefs and values of the culture and family and social groups we belong to. This does not mean you become isolated or disconnected from humanity. It means you develop a conscious relationship with the collective rather than an unconscious identification with it. It means you begin to question the assumptions you inherited, to examine the beliefs you took on without realizing it, to discern which values are truly yours and which were imposed upon you. It means you learn to stand in your own truth, even when it differs from the consensus, even when it makes you unpopular, even when it costs you relationships or opportunities or the approval you once craved. This is lonely work. There is no way around that. When you commit to becoming who you truly are, when you refuse to compromise your integrity for the sake of belonging, you will experience periods of solitude, of feeling different, of feeling like you do not quite fit anywhere. And this can be painful. This can make you doubt yourself, make you wonder if you're making a mistake, if you should just go back to how things were, if authenticity is really worth the price. But the price of inauthenticity is higher. The price of living a life that is not truly yours, of maintaining a self that is not truly you, of spending your days performing and pretending and hiding. This price is paid in depression, in anxiety, in a pervasive sense of emptiness and meaninglessness, in physical symptoms that are your body's way of saying, no, this is not right, this is not sustainable, you cannot keep living this way. The price is paid in lost years, in relationships that never go deep, in work that never satisfies, in a life that looks fine from the outside but feels hollow on the inside. And at some point, often in midlife, but sometimes earlier, sometimes later, the psyche will no longer tolerate this arrangement. It will create a crisis, a breakdown, a dark night of the soul, something that forces you to stop, to look, to question, to change. And when this happens, when you find yourself in the midst of this crisis, you're not broken. You are waking up. You are being called back to yourself. You are being given the opportunity, painful as it is, to live differently, to choose authenticity over approval, depth over distraction, truth over comfort. This is the opportunity that is hidden in your pain. This is the gift that is wrapped in your struggle. Not that suffering is good or necessary or something to be sought out, but that when it comes, when it cannot be avoided, it can be used, it can be transformed into something meaningful, something generative, something that deepens and enriches your life rather than diminishing it. This is what it means to heal, not to erase the wound, but to integrate it, to allow it to become part of your story, part of your wisdom, part of what makes you who you are. Not to forget the pain, but to learn from it, to let it teach you about yourself, about life, about what matters and what is not. Not to become invulnerable, but to become more human, more compassionate, more capable of holding complexity and paradox, more able to sit with others in their pain because you have learned to sit with your own. And as you heal, as you integrate, as you become more whole, you will find that your capacity for joy also expands. This is one of the paradoxes of the healing journey. The more you can feel pain, the more you can feel pleasure, the more you can be with sadness, the more you can experience delight. The more you open to the full spectrum of human emotion, the more alive you become, the more present, the more engaged with the richness and texture of life. You stop living on the surface. You stop skimming over your experience. You stop numbing and distracting and avoiding. You drop down into the depths, and you discover that the depths are not only dark, they are also luminous. They contain beauty and meaning and connection and love. They contain the parts of yourself that you have been longing for, the qualities and capacities that you could not access when you were living behind the mask, when you were performing the role, when you were trying so hard to be acceptable and appropriate and good. You are not broken. You are healing. And healing is not a straight line. It is not a smooth progression from suffering to happiness, from confusion to clarity, from fragmentation to wholeness. It is messy and nonlinear and full of setbacks and surprises. It is 2 steps forward and 1 step back, and sometimes 1 step forward and 3 steps back. It is days when you feel strong and capable, followed by days when you can barely get out of bed. It is moments of profound insight followed by periods of confusion and doubt. It is progress that is invisible to everyone around you. Changes that are happening on the inside that no one can see, shifts in your relationship with yourself that do not show up in any external way, but that are nonetheless real and significant and transformative. You have to trust the process, even when you cannot see the results. You have to trust that something is happening even when it feels like nothing is changing. You have to trust that the work you're doing, the feeling you are feeling, the time you're taking, all of it matters. All of it is necessary. All of it is part of the journey from who you are to who you are becoming. There will be people who do not understand. There will be people who think you're taking too long, who think you should be over it by now, who think you're being self-indulgent or self-pitying or stuck. Let them think what they think. Their opinions are not your truth. Their timeline is not your timeline. Their journey is not your journey. You are not healing for them. You are not healing to meet their expectations or to ease their discomfort or to prove anything to anyone. You are healing for yourself because you deserve to live a life that is authentic and meaningful and aligned with who you truly are. You are healing because you cannot go back to who you were, because the old ways of being no longer work, because something in you knows that there is more, that you are more, that life can be more than what you have settled for up until now. And this knowing, this deep inner knowing that will not be silenced or denied or reasoned away, this is your guide. This is what you must follow, even when it leads you into darkness, even when it asks you to let go of everything familiar, even when it requires you to walk alone for a while. Solitude is often necessary for healing. Not isolation, not disconnection, but solitude. Time alone with yourself. Time to listen to your own inner voice. Time to feel your own feelings without having to explain or justify or perform for anyone else. In solitude, you can take off the mask. You can let down the defenses. You can be exactly as you are, without editing, without censoring, without trying to be more or less or different than you actually are in this moment. In solitude, you can rest. You can stop trying so hard. You can let yourself be held by silence, by stillness, by the simple fact of your own existence. And in this rest, in this stopping, something begins to heal. Not because you are doing anything, but because you are finally allowing yourself to simply be, to exist without purpose or productivity, to take up space without justifying it, to breathe without having to earn the right to breathe. This is radical in a culture that equates worth with achievement, that measures value by output, that tells you that you must always be doing, always be improving, always be moving forward. To stop, to rest, to be unproductive, this is an act of resistance. This is a refusal to participate in a system that wants to extract everything from you and give nothing back. This is a reclaiming of your own humanity, your own right to exist, not because of what you accomplish, but simply because you are. And in this reclamation, in this radical act of self-acceptance, you begin to heal the deepest wound of all, the wound that tells you that you're not enough, that you must earn love, that you must prove your worth, that you are only valuable if you're useful to others. This wound is so deep, so pervasive, so woven into the fabric of our culture, that most people never question it. They spend their entire lives trying to be enough, trying to do enough, trying to achieve enough, and they never stop to ask whether the premise is true, whether worth is something that must be earned, or whether it is something inherent, something given, something that belongs to you simply because you exist. You are not broken. You are healing. And part of what you are healing is this belief that you must earn your place in the world, that you must justify your existence, that you must be more or different or better in order to deserve love and acceptance and belonging. You are learning, slowly and painfully, and with many setbacks, that you are enough exactly as you are, that you do not need to fix yourself or improve yourself or transform yourself in order to be worthy, that your worth is not conditional, not dependent on your achievements or your appearance or your ability to please others. You are learning that you can be imperfect and still be loved, that you can be struggling and still be valuable, that you can be in process and still be whole. Because wholeness is not the same as perfection. Wholeness includes the broken parts, the wounded parts, the parts that are still healing. Wholeness is the integration of all of you, not just the parts that are acceptable or attractive or easy to be around. Wholeness is the willingness to be fully human, to embrace your complexity, to hold your contradictions, to accept that you are both light and shadow, both strength and vulnerability, both healed and healing. Jung believed that the goal of individuation, the goal of becoming whole, is not to eliminate the shadow, but to integrate it, to bring it into consciousness, to develop a relationship with it. He believed that we cannot be whole if we are only identified with the light, only claiming the parts of ourselves that are good and noble and admirable. We must also claim the parts that are difficult, the parts that are selfish or angry or afraid, the parts that we have been taught to hide or deny. We must bring all of it into the light of awareness, not to judge it or condemn it, but to understand it, to see how it has served us, to recognize that even our so-called negative qualities have their place, their function, their wisdom. And as we do this work of integration, as we learn to hold the full spectrum of who we are, we become more compassionate, more humble, more human. We stop projecting our shadow onto others. We stop judging them for the qualities we cannot accept in ourselves. We stop dividing the world into good and bad, right and wrong, us and them. We begin to see the complexity in everyone, the struggle in everyone, the humanity in everyone. This is what healing gives you. Not perfection, but perspective. Not certainty, but compassion. Not a life without pain, but a capacity to be with pain in a way that does not destroy you. Not the elimination of difficulty, but the development of resilience. Not the construction of a flawless self, but the acceptance of a beautifully flawed self. You're not broken. You are healing. And healing is not about becoming someone else. It is about becoming more fully yourself, more authentically you, more aligned with your own truth, your own values, your own deep inner knowing. It is about stripping away the layers of conditioning and expectation and performance to reveal what was always there underneath, the essential you, the core you, the you that existed before the world told you who you should be. This process takes time. It takes patience. It takes a willingness to be gentle with yourself, to treat yourself with the same kindness and compassion you would offer to someone you love who is going through a difficult time. It takes a willingness to let go of the timeline, to stop comparing your progress to anyone else's, to trust that you are exactly where you need to be, even when it does not feel that way, even when you are frustrated with how slowly things are moving, even when you wish you were further along. You are not behind. You are not failing. You are healing at the pace that is right for you, in the way that is right for you, according to the wisdom of your own psyche, your own soul, your own deep inner intelligence that knows what you need even when your conscious mind does not. And as you continue on this journey, as you do the work of healing, of integration, of becoming whole, you will begin to notice that your relationship with yourself changes. You will become less harsh, less critical, less demanding. You will begin to see yourself with more compassion, more understanding, more acceptance. You will begin to appreciate the journey you have been on, the challenges you have faced, the strength it has taken to keep going even when you wanted to give up. You will begin to recognize that you are not broken, that you have never been broken, That what you have been experiencing is not a defect, but a process, not a problem, but a transformation, not an ending, but a beginning. You are healing, and healing is not the opposite of being broken. Healing is the recognition that you were never broken in the first place. That what you experienced as brokenness was actually the breaking open of a too small container, the shattering of a false self, the dismantling of a life that was never truly yours. You are healing, and in healing, you are becoming whole, not by adding something you lack, but by reclaiming something you lost, something you gave away, something you hid or denied or forgot. You're coming home to yourself. And this homecoming, this return, this reclamation, this is what healing is. This is what you're doing, even when it does not feel like it, even when it hurts, even when you are tired and discouraged and ready to give up. You are healing. You are becoming. You are whole.